Welcome to the DFL Breakdown, presented by GrizLeeGear, with your hosts, Lucas Ford and Ricky Epperson.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the DFL Breakdown, the #1 cartoon side character themed, league-specific, weekly fantasy football podcast in America.
That's right.
We're back once again. It's been another great week of football. It was election week this week as well, so we got a new president coming in. I guess not a new one, but we won't talk too much about that on this podcast here. But we are about the football, and we had a lot of great football action. I don't have my co-host here today, and the episode is approximately 12 hours late. Had a little bit of scheduling difficulties this week, but couldn't skip one, so I'm recording this now, and we're going to get it going. It is Thursday, November 7th, 2024. We got a great game scheduled for tonight between the Ravens and the Bengals. A lot of fantasy implications in that one, so should be an exciting one. But speaking of exciting games, we had plenty in the Dimmadome this week that I'd love to get to here, so let's not waste any time. I'm planning on doing a rapid-fire episode here and getting through all these matches quickly to send you into this Thursday night football action here. So let's start with our game breaker from Week 9, and we'll go on from there. Let's do it.
I'm coming! Here I come! Game Breaker.
All right. Yeah, we had some pretty high scores from a few individuals this week. Saquon Barkley had that crazy backwards hurdle where he put his ass all the way over somebody's head mid-spin move, which was cool. Garrett Wilson also had an amazing game Thursday night with one of the catches of the year, maybe the best catch of the year, though there was another one this week that made it somewhat debatable. But neither of those guys were the game breaker. It was Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow, the quarterback of the Bengals, who we'll see tonight. Last week putting up almost 40 points versus the Raiders, 39.14. He's been electric. The beginning of the season was rough for him, but he's really turned it around, and Slim Shady is more like Sling Shady out there right now because the dude is tossing it. I saw a stat earlier today saying that he has the highest pass rate in the red zone out of all NFL quarterbacks at the moment. He's getting those passing touchdowns, and it's working out huge for Chris. So great part of his game there this week, and a little bit of a spoiler, you can't be the game breaker without a winner. Chris extends his win streak to 5 weeks in a row of wins for Chris on the back of Joe Burrow and the lads on the Women in the Kitchen team. Let's get into his matchup, and we can talk about more guys on his team there, but for now, Joe Burrow is the game breaker. All right, let's go to the score summary.
Score summary.
Right. Yeah, so looking at Chris's matchup, this one was a doozy. 140 points for George Droid. That's formerly the Zins. Johnny Zin 69. That's Riley's team versus Women in the Kitchen. Chris with 145.94. A high flying affair here. And yeah, Joe Burrow's 40-point week was definitely needed for Chris here, only winning by less than 6 points. We talked about him. Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon were good this week, but not as good as they have been. They didn't quite meet their projections, but again, it was enough to get him there, so not too much to rag on. Drake London got a little bit of a hit pointer in that game and left early, but managed to get a touchdown on one of his receptions before he did. Didn't leave Chris hanging there. Scary Terry only two receptions on the day, but 2 touchdowns to go with him here. 16 points on only 19 yards. Pretty crazy stuff. Hunter Henry, a great tight end week, 7 receptions for 56 yards. Can't ask for more there. And Kareem Hunt, Monday night, did it for Chris. Got a touchdown in overtime to end the game. And if you'll notice, Chris won by less than 6 points. So that touchdown put him ahead just barely, and just enough for him to clinch it at midnight on Monday night. So heartbreaker for Riley, for the George Droid team, but elation for Chris, I'm sure, as Kareem Hunt carried him to another victory. Got some extra points out of Harrison Butker in that same game, and again, he needed them. Washington's defense was serviceable, though they didn't hit projections, and Anal Zone did just fine for him there. So great performance out of the women in the kitchen again. They are in the top 3 for points scored on the year, and if we looked at, say, the last 5 weeks, I'd say he'd be on top by a wide margin. So good job, Chris. Your team is hot, and they may only be getting hotter. We'll see if they manage to pull it together for this week, though. I know he's got some injuries that he's dealing with. Let's talk about George Droid's team. Again, 140 points this week. Nothing to really be upset about. Jalen Hurts was great. Alvin Kamara was fantastic. I mean, the Saints lost to the Panthers this week, and Kamara still got 27.5 points. Chris Olave caught a hospital ball and promptly went to the hospital afterwards. The Saints are so depleted. Rashid Shaheed is injured for the season. Bub Means missed the last game. Chris Olave's out. They got nobody there but Kamara, so he is going to continue to carry a huge workload for them, and that means good things for Riley. Tyrone Tracy hasn't done the best that he's done so far this season. 7.9 points. You're really not happy about that looking at it. If you're Riley, same with the DJ Moore, 7.3. He just recently acquired him, and it didn't end up working out for him this week. Josh Downs was great off of... I think he picked him up a week or two ago. He's been kind of back and forth on the waiver wire, so I'll be honest, I didn't do too much research on who the waiver warrior was this week. I have an idea that I wanted to go with, and I'll announce one later, but don't fact check me on it, please. Josh Downs could be there too. 13 points for him. We got 8.9 out of Njoku here. Wasn't really a great game for Cleveland, so to even get 9 points out of him is acceptable. But not exactly what you were looking for after some 20-point weeks that he's put up recently. Darnell Mooney was great. He put up a bunch of points, 20 points. That's 5 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. He's really been turning into a dependable guy for the Falcons. Kirk seems to target him a lot. And that has been great for Riley as well. Brandon Aubrey back to doing Brandon Aubrey things, 15.1 points there. The dude is electric and continues to light it up in the kicking column. A rare disappointment from the Broncos. They were playing against the Ravens, so it's understandable for them to give up some points, but they have been very, very good for Riley this year. So to put up -3, in a game where you lose by 5, that really, really hurts. Pretty much any other defense probably could have gotten him there this week. So rough stuff for Riley there. That's probably the one thing I would say lost him this game more than anything else, because Max Crosby got 10 points. He did great as well. So this was, like I said, a very high-scoring match. Both these guys got their median wins, and they're pretty safe up at the top of the leaderboard right now, second and third. So I'm sure neither of them are too upset, but Riley did want to hold that win on Monday night and was pretty peeved when it got taken away from him at the end there. 13-5 for Riley and 12-6 for Chris. Let's go now from that matchup to the Ball Hogs versus Trump 2024. He picked up a massive win this week in real life, but in the Dimmadome, Trump 2024 took heavy losses. 0-2 for him this week, only putting up 109.9 points, while I put up 147.32. It wasn't thanks to Dak Prescott. He got injured in this game. It's actually the third time a Ball Hogs quarterback has been injured and removed mid-game this season. I can't seem to get it right on my quarterback picks, but I'm hoping that changes in the future here. He still put up 14 points, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I really wanted more out of him here, but it turns out I didn't need it, so nothing I can be too upset about. The reason I didn't need it, though, is because my 2 running backs combined for 65 total points. 32.9 out of Saquon Barkley, and 32.1 out of Devon Achane, both scoring multiple touchdowns, being heavily involved in the receiving game, and running shit on the ground as well. Very excited about those two guys. I hope they continue to carry me throughout the rest of the season. Achane putting up 32 against the Bills is very, very good for me. I'm really happy to see that. He showed that he could possibly have dependency issues earlier in the season while the Dolphins were struggling, but even in a game that they lost, Devon Achane scored over 30 points, so I love to see that. It didn't go to Tyreek Hill as much because of it, though. Only 12 points out of him, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to capture some of those Dolphins points either on the ground or through the air here. So even though it wasn't Tyreek Hill's best day, Devon Achane more than made up for it. So that is good there. Tank Dell, 6 receptions for 126 yards. No touchdown there, just all volume. He looked great, had a couple long bombs, had a couple nice runs after catch, had a couple little end around screen stuff. He was heavily involved in the pass attack without Stephon Diggs or Nico Collins there. Nico looks to be coming back this week, so I'm hoping it doesn't change too much, but the possibility is certainly there. Trey McBride with 12.7. He's been nothing but dependable for me, constantly putting up somewhere between 10 to 15, heavily involved in that pass attack, got a touchdown this week, so love to see it. Brian Thomas only 6.2, a rare down performance from him. His worst of the year so far, but this was his first game back after being removed from the last one with that chest injury. I know he's been nursing it, so he was probably on a little bit of a quote-unquote pitch count in this one. And don't let the score deceive you. It's 23-28, but this is a game that the Jags offense did not do well in, and there was a crazy turn of events where they scored 2 touchdowns close to the end of the game to make it pretty tight. But for the whole game, they were struggling, so it ended up hampering Brian Thomas's performance even more. Justin Tucker, a good kicking week out of him. Happy about that. He hasn't had too many of those this year, despite my hopes and dreams in the draft. So good to see him, putting up the numbers I wanted to get out of him at the very minimum. And Genkelberg and the Chiefs' defense weren't all that great for me, but again, didn't end up needing big production out of them this week. Let's look at Nate's team. Jordan Love had a very rough time versus the Lions. The Lions look unstoppable right now, and they really shut the Cheeseheads down. Jordan Love suffered because of it, and he looks to be having his own sort of injury problems and things that he's been dealing with as well, so we'll see if he turns that around. The Dowdler, Rico Dowdle, caught a touchdown while laying on his back. Not something you see too often in the NFL, but Rico Dowdle managed it this week. Scored 21.7 points, had 75 yards on the ground, and 5 receptions for 32 yards. The dude was involved. Love to see that if you're a Rico Dowdle owner. You took a chance on him this year, and you feel like you're taking a chance on him, starting him with how bad the Cowboys have been doing, but he has been good. So I would hope to see, if I'm Nate, him firing up more Rico Dowdle. Kyren Williams with a down week, a rare one for him this season. Fumbled the ball once, only 1 reception and 69 yards on the ground, only 9.5 points. You definitely want at least 10 out of your RB1 there, so feels bad to only get 9.5. Part of the reason why his score was so low. Jamar Chase, only 11.3 points. He had 7 receptions, but very little yardage. The Bengals stomped the Raiders here, so he wasn't necessarily needed to do a whole lot, but you still want to see Chase get some more volume and some more of that pay dirt in the end zone if you're Nate. Devonta Smith made up for it, though. He had that other crazy catch this week, 18.7 points. For him, with a touchdown and 87 yards on 4 receptions. I liked seeing, while we were in this matchup, the little bit of a mirror between our wide receiver 1 and 2. Tyreek Hill with 12, Jamar Chase with 11.3, Tank Dell with 18.6, Devonta Smith with 18.7. It was pretty close in the receiving department here, and then the tight ends as well. But his flex, Dontavian Wicks, 0 receptions again. Dude's got feet for hands. I don't know what is happening with him, but it seems whenever Nate fires him up, he doesn't catch the ball. So that is bad. And another big reason why your points are low and you don't make the median on the week when you put up a goose like that. He did get a great performance out of the Vikings defense back on his team here. Well, not back on his team, but back in the starting lineup. Bobby Wagner was fine as well, but didn't quite get there based on the performances out of his quarterback, his RB1, his wide receiver 1, and his flex guy here. And that's what puts you at 110 for the week. So I moved to 8-10, and Nate moves to 10-8. That's 4th place for him, and I'm in 7th place at 8-10. So if that doesn't give you a good idea of how tight the middle of the pack is, then we'll see. You'll get a clearer picture painted when we look at the standings. But we're within a game, and that is pretty exciting for everyone trying to make that playoff push here. Let's take a look now from my game. We already talked about Chris versus Riley. Let's look at the Toaster Bass versus Herbert the Pervert. Mike picking up a rare win here, moving to 5-13 on the year. He did get the median victory, and he beat Lehman in this one, who only scored 123 points. And he missed the median by just a little bit as well. So, yeah, Mike getting a great performance out of Sam Darnold. 25 points out of him. 3 touchdowns thrown. He even got a little bit of rushing yards in there, but nothing too crazy. He lost a fumble as well, so that hurts. But 25 points at your quarterback. I'm sure you're happy about that if you're Mike. Let's see, Tony Pollard, been continually productive here. Ran for over 128 yards. Ran for 128 yards against the Patriots with 3 receptions for 26 yards. They utilized him a ton. 28 carries. It looked like every play they were just running Tony Pollard, and it continued to work. This game went to overtime, and it was close, but the Titans did manage to pull it out here, and Tony Pollard was a big part of that. Kenneth Walker, 13.7 points. No touchdown for him, but over 100 all-purpose yards with 3 receptions tacked on there. Not the best day out of him, but still serviceable. And again, enough to get him to the win, so I'm sure he's not upset about it. Zay Flowers was huge for him there, almost 30 points. He got 2 touchdowns on 5 receptions for 127 yards. He was just open and running down the field like crazy, which was great for Mike here. That combined with Justin Jefferson putting up almost 22 points was a big contributor to his win, because you can see in between those guys, these two weren't as much of a contributing factor here. Xavier Worthy with -1 full point. He ran for -10 yards and didn't catch the ball inbounds at one time. That hurts, but thankfully Mike made up for it with his other guys here. Kyle Pitts, same thing, only 1 reception for 11 yards. I think he might have ended up leaving early in that game or something happened. I'm not sure why he only got 1 reception and 1 target, but that is what happened for him. He got a pass defend and 10 tackles out of Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens, and the Ravens defense also got him 9 points. He was really keyed up on that Thursday night defense for the Ravens, and it rewarded him, getting him a combined total of 22.5 points. Jake Elliott only scoring 4.3 isn't what you want to see. I think he missed a field goal that he should have hit. I remember watching that and being like, wow, rare Jake Elliott miss, but he did. And it didn't make the difference in this matchup, but I'm sure for others it could have. So, yeah, poor performance out of the boot, Jake Elliott there. Let's talk about the Toaster Baths. They had a great top of their lineup here. Josh Allen for 28 points, Chase Brown for 26. They both did fantastic for him, and David Montgomery even beat his projections as well with 73 yards and 3 receptions for 23 yards through the air. But CeeDee Lamb didn't quite meet his projections. He got 16.2, which is still great. Still a lot better than a lot of other players this week. But not, the number 1 or number 2 overall wide receiver that people expected coming into the season. It's been rough for the Cowboys, so we'll see if they manage to turn it around. But with Dak Prescott missing time and CeeDee Lamb picking up some sort of questionable tag in that game as well, it might be tough sledding for them moving forward here. Khalil Shakir got the start, as well as Ladd McConkey, as I recommended last week, and they did fine. They get 11 and 11.4 points, respectively. But if we scroll down a little bit and look at the other options he had, DeAndre Hopkins and Jackson Smith-Njigba combined for like 76 points on the week. And even Austin Eckler got 17 points for him. So this was really a heartbreaker for Lehman. He had the points he could have used to win in this one, but instead got 0 out of Cole Kmet, average production out of Shakir and McConkey, and managed to waste this one away here. Brian Branch got ejected from this game early, which really hurt Lehman as well. It was a hit. It was helmet to helmet, but he was leading with the shoulder. It certainly was not intentional, and it was pretty obvious to see that it wasn't intentional, but New York called the refs and said, "Get that guy out of here. We don't want to see him play this week. Lehman has to lose." So they kicked him out, and Brian Branch did not have the opportunity to score much more points for Lehman here. You don't blame the player for that one. That's just kind of an unfortunate fact of life with 2024 football. The refs may just get involved and fuck your whole shit up. So that sucks for Lehman, but he'll get him on the next one if his guys continue to produce like that. I'm sure he's probably going to want to start DeAndre Hopkins and possibly Jackson Smith-Njigba moving forward here. But as far as this one goes, tough loss for him. He gets 0-2 on the week and moves to 9-9. And Herbert the Pervert gets 2 wins, moves to 5-13. Unfortunately, I believe he is still in last place, so isn't going to make it on the standing screenshot yet, but he is working his way back. You know, this team is talented, and I'm not the only one who's thought that in the last week or so. I remember Riley saying something in the chat. Not a free win. He may be in last, but you can't just chalk this one up as a W when you're matched against him, because he can pull games like this out pretty easily here. The team is good, so yeah, definitely don't sleep on Mike with the Herbert the Pervert team. Let's look at Dylan versus Eric. The Stroud Boys versus CIA has entered the chat, and this one is our
Wet Noodle Fight of the Week.
That's right. It was a low-scoring one here, kind of a stinker. Eric managed to pull it out here with a 112.64 point finish. I'm sure other people looking at this are like, man, I scored 140 or 130 and lost, and this guy scores 112 and wins. That seems to be the story of Eric's season so far. He picked up a median loss, but stays at 9-9. Manages to win even on those low-scoring events here. CJ Stroud didn't do all that great for him. 11.5 points. They got smoked versus the Jets. Pretty sad to see if you're a Texans fan. However, Breece Hall wasn't really all that great for him either. He had both sides of that game, and neither of them ended up producing all that much for him. So that is pretty disheartening if you're Eric. James Cook also didn't really get a whole lot done. Only 44 yards on the ground and 25 through the air. Most of his points came through just the receptions alone in the PPR format. Not most, but almost half. You want to get more yardage there out of your guy if you are Eric. Keenan Allen, another disappointing week. Only 4 receptions on 10 targets for 36 yards. And they're not high-value targets either. Caleb Williams not really looking like he's slinging the ball all that well. And the Shane Waldron offense just doesn't even make sense on paper. So I understand why Caleb's having a hard time. You look at the way the scheme is operating and where guys are going, and it just doesn't make sense. And that's why Caleb is confused in the pocket trying to find who to pass to, because no one is open when they're supposed to be. The scheme just doesn't function correctly. But enough about that. Let's talk about Jacoby Myers, who has been incredibly consistent for this terrible Raiders team. 8 receptions for 105 yards. He continues to do it, man. He has, like I said, just been scoring these points every week. It seems like 19 this week, 17.2 last week. Missed some time, but 13.2 before that. Even a 21-point game in week 4. Jacoby Myers looking like a weekly flex play at the very least, if not a wide receiver 2. I'd be excited to fire him up if he was on my team. So pretty good stuff out of him. Evan Ingram continues to be valuable here. 5 receptions for 45 yards and got a little 2-point conversion as well. 10 targets for him, though. I mean, he's a focal point of this offense. Volume goes his way. He's never been reliant on the touchdown. He just seems to catch a ton of passes. So that has been great for Eric and continued to be great for him here. Speaking of tight ends, he flexed Cade Otton as well. 21.7 points for him there. Cade has just emerged as the favorite target for Baker Mayfield after Godwin and Evans have been missing time, and just continues to catch passes. 8 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. I mean, yeah, it was right to flex him. I'm certainly scared anytime I'm even thinking about flexing a tight end. But Eric did it fearlessly, and it paid off huge for him there. So nice job. Got some good points out of your flex guy there. Kaimi Fairbairn he did great, 11.4 points. A lot of kicking for the Texans in that game that they lost to the Jets in. Like I said, they didn't win. They didn't really do all that great, so the Houston defense suffered as well. Only 5 points out of them. And then 2.5 points out of Xavier McKinney. He got 5 tackles, and that's it. So I'm sure he expected to get more out of him there, but still took home the win with that amount of points. Let's take a look at Dylan's team. He fired up Matt Stafford, who got 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 21 points for him on the day. So a great performance out of him. Rachaad White scored 12.5. Wasn't really enough to do it for Dylan Monday night, but he did still have a respectable day. Raheem Mostert, a fresh pickup for him as part of a trade, was a producer. He did around what he was expected, only missed it by 0.4 points. But Dylan has been suffering for a little while now with his running back 2 slot, so I'm sure he's just happy to pick him up and put him in. Puka threw a punch and got ejected after catching only 1 pass for 11 yards. You don't get points for punching people, and you can't get points in the locker room, so that's why he only got 3 on the day. But I don't know where he got another point from, because 1 catch for 11 yards should be 2.1 points, but maybe he tackled somebody or something, and I'm just not seeing it here. Anyway, yeah, 3.1 points for him. Rough stuff to see your player get ejected like that. Lehman had the same problem this week, too. It's the week of player ejections. Jalen Waddle caught a touchdown super late in the game, but it didn't end up mattering. He got -4 total yards. I got more yards than Jalen Waddle this week on an NFL football field, but less touchdowns. So I guess he can still hang that one up over me there. Let's look at Dalton Kincaid, who got 4 receptions for 32 yards. He's really been underproducing the average tight end as of late. Not what you were hoping for if you're Dylan or anyone drafting Dalton Kincaid. You're hoping he turns it around moving forward because it's been rough starting him the last few weeks. Keon Coleman got picked up and put in for a start. Didn't do what he did the last week or two. Only got 6.1 points. 1 reception for a 21-yard, 2-point conversion. I don't remember seeing that one on TV. Those stats don't make a ton of sense to me. Maybe they took a penalty and still went for 2. That seems odd to me, though, so I'm going to have to look into what happened with that. Tyler Bass, 16 points. He got a 60-yarder to end that game to win at the end of the game there. It was over 60 yards. It was a crazy kick, and he nailed it. That makes big points in the Dimmadome, and 16 for him there. We also got Tennessee's defense doing well against the Patriots. They forced a fumble and recovered it, 4 sacks, and they intercepted Drake May twice. So rough stuff for the Patriots, but good for Tennessee's defense. Foyesade Aluakun, also on the CIA, has entered the chat team. 7.5 points for him there with some tackles. But yeah, again,
Wet Noodle Fight of the Week.
It was a rough one for both sides. They both take a median loss here. Eric moves to 9-9, and Dylan moves to 7-11 there. And we'll see if he can turn it around or if he's going to continue to struggle like this. Because if you're putting up 103 points, you're probably going to lose 9 times out of 10 here. All right, let's take a look now. Oops, I'm on the wrong tab. From that matchup down to Bill Cosby Sleepers versus the Dogs. This one was super close and came down to the very last play, actually the second to last play of the game. That last play was the Kareem Hunt touchdown that won Chris a game, but the second to last play was a big pass to Travis Kelce, who went nuts in this game and got them right to the line for Kareem to run it in. Patrick Mahomes threw the ball and did well for Corey, but unfortunately threw it to Kelce a little too much and inflated Artie's score here. 122.92 to 121.64. Artie really gutted this one out and earned it here. One thing to note, Corey was texting me after saying he's playing with his hands tied behind his back because he doesn't check his lineup and didn't sub out Micah Parsons, who's injured and didn't play in that game, and he only lost by a point. So he wanted to make a note to say that everyone should watch out for his team because if he took it seriously, he would win, to which I said, maybe you should actually take it seriously then. You have no one else to blame but yourself for this one. So, yeah, you had another defender on bye as well. I'm sure he could have dropped someone, Braylon Allen, anyone to put in a defender and score a single point there. So, you know, you can say whatever you want to help yourself sleep at night, Corey, but you lost this one, and it's squarely on your head there, even though you got an impressive performance out of Patrick Mahomes. Like I said, 30.5 points out of him. He even got 13.2 out of DeAndre Swift. Nick Chubb was disappointing, only 4.5 points there. I mean, he got 15 carries, but he barely averaged over 2, did not average 3 yards a carry, and got a negative 4-yard reception as well. So really just not a great day for Nick. I feel like he's kind of ramping up with his return here. I think it's only his second game back, and it was a tough one for them, so we'll see if he gets it together moving forward here. They're on bye this week, though, so it won't be this week. We'll see if next week after the bye he's got everything put together and turns into the Nick Chubb of old, or if he's lost it. It's hard to come back from knee injuries like that. We'll see what happens. Cooper Kupp, 21.4 points, 11 receptions for 104 yards. We mentioned Puka leaving this game early, so Cooper Kupp was the X factor for the Rams, who only won by 6, so they had to go to him a lot, and he caught a lot. Yeah, 11 receptions. You love to see it. 140 yards, you also love to see that. Great stuff out of Cooper Kupp there. Xavier Legette, Corey was very confident in him moving into this week. He put in our little bozo parlay that he was going to get over 40 yards. Didn't quite do that on the day, but did score a touchdown. 4 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown. Gave him just about 15 points. Was only projected for 9.5. So really a great performance out of him. You love seeing Xavier Legette get some more action. He's a cool guy to watch. He's a cool guy to listen to. His interviews are hilarious. And Bryce Young leading a game-winning drive against the Saints got Dennis Allen fired. So just all around great football. Love to see it. And that was cool for Corey, getting 15 points out of Xavier Legette. Sam Laporta got 5 points, only 2 receptions for 28 yards. Pretty disappointing. It seems like even though the Lions' offense is incredible and scores at will, it's almost unreliable. They don't really hold the ball all that long. They're not high volume. They just kind of score instantly whenever they get it. So if your guy isn't the one that gets the touchdown, you're probably sad with the drive. And it didn't happen for Sam Laporta all day. So only the 2 receptions for 28 yards, like we talked about there. Jaden Reed getting 16.3 points. He was great. 5 receptions for 113 yards. Big chunk plays. No touchdown for him, but he was just down the field catching bombs. And it was one of the few bright spots of that Packers offense in that loss versus Detroit. Younghoe Koo, 3 extra points, no field goals. They didn't need him to come out and kick anything. They just scored whenever they wanted to as well, and beat the Cowboys. So just 3 points for Younghoe. 13 points out of the Bengals defense versus that Raiders team. They forced a fumble and recovered 2 of them. So one was unforced. They also got 5 sacks on the day, which is pretty good. So 13 points for them there. And then we talked about the goose egg from the Micah Parsons play where he did not play. Hard to score points when you are not on the field. Let's talk about the sleepers, the winner of this matchup, Geno Smith, putting up 27.1 points, 3 touchdowns. It was a rough one to start. They didn't really even look all that great in that game, but Geno scored a bunch of fantasy points, so that's all we care about. Good job from Geno there. Chuba Hubbard, we got a little piece of news about Chuba Hubbard today. He just signed a 4-year contract extension for like $30-something million for a Panthers team that's just been struggling. It's kind of a baffling move for me there, but apparently they've loved what they've seen out of Chuba the last couple of years, and they want him long term. So they gave him the money, and Jonathan Brooks has been activated and is expected to play this week as well. We'll see what the balance looks like between those two guys. Some people saying the money means that they're really just going to lean on Hubbard some more. Others are saying that with the money they gave him over 4 years, they may not want to run him into the ground this year. So we'll see if they want to see what they have in Jonathan Brooks in a year where they know they're not going to the playoffs. Maybe they run him a lot, or if they just continue to lean on Chuba because he's been great and they want to see him be great some more. Who was not great this week is Jonathan Taylor, only 8.9 points. He got 13 carries for 48 yards with 3 receptions for 11 yards. The Colts offense looked dysfunctional. Joe Flacco was in, and a lot of people thought that would mean more production, but they ended up having their worst offensive game of the year. Some of that can be attributed to the Vikings defense being great, but man, this was supposed to be a revitalizing move, and you were supposed to get a lot out of your Colts this week, so disappointing to see less than 10 out of Jonathan Taylor. A.J. Brown only got 2 receptions for 36 yards. I believe he left this game early too, if I'm not mistaken. He was limited. He missed the second half. He had some knee issues. Right, it was a knee thing, and they were very concerned about that. Recent news says it's more day-to-day than anything, and he didn't tear a tendon or anything like that, so that's good news moving forward, but it was definitely bad news for Artie this week. Got just enough to get him there, though. Got his 2 receptions, so can't complain too much. And then Sterling Shepard as his wide receiver, too. I got to be honest, I was shocked to see him in there. I think he dropped Elijah Moore for him, or something like that here. No, he's still got Elijah Moore on his team. I don't know who he ended up dropping for him, but he picked him up this week and put him in. I'm going ahead and giving it to him now.
Waiver Warrior.
This is our Waiver Warrior. A Sterling Shepard start, getting almost 11 points for him here. Almost double what he was, or more than double what he was projected to get. And again, he needed every single one of these points. So to wait until that Monday night Sterling Shepard start took a lot of balls and got him the win here. So incredible job, Artie. That's a Waiver Warrior if I've ever seen one. Again, I didn't check these numbers. Do not fact check me. I'm giving it to Sterling Shepard whether you like it or not. We talked about Travis Kelce putting up a 22-point week, 14 receptions for 100 yards. Huge for him. This is exactly what we've come to expect over the last few years. It was a little bit slow to start, but Travis Kelce has been doing it the last few weeks. 22, 24. Before the bye, he got 16 and 16 again. Had a 5.7 game against the Niners where they didn't need him as much. But, yeah, he's been consistent the last few weeks here. It's a little bit of a contradictory statement, but we're just going to move on from it here. Good performance out of Travis Kelce. Another flex start for Mark Andrews where he just doesn't do it. God, it seems like every time I see this dude on the bench, he's popping off. And every time I see him in a starting lineup, he is as titled here, the dog shit idiot that he is meant to be. 4.6 points, only 2 receptions. This is a blowout win. You expect to see more out of your guy, but talk about consistency or consistency issues. Mark Andrews is definitely that. Not been consistent this year, and Artie has been suffering. But again, he got the win, so can't complain too much about it. Daniel Carlson, 7.6. He was projected 7.9. Can't complain there. 11 points out of the Philadelphia defense with a forced fumble with a recovery and 2 interceptions. And then Demario Davis, only 4 points out of him. Didn't quite get the performance he wanted against those Panthers. Like we mentioned, the Panthers won that game. So, yeah, rough stuff there. But got the win. Neither of these guys got their median win on the day. So, Artie moves to 5-13 on this one with the 1-1 performance. And Corey moves to 7-11 with that 0-2 week. Let's talk about our last matchup of the week, and this one was a doozy. It was Ricky versus Alex. 140 points for Alex, but not enough to take down the perfect sell. 162-point performance here. Lamar Jackson doing Lamar Jackson things. 28.6. It seems like you can just expect that every week. That safe rushing floor. He only got 4 yards rushing, though, so really it was just passing. Homie was passing all day on Thursday, 16 out of 19 completions for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think it was a like perfect quarterback rating game for him again, and it puts him tied for first for the most in NFL history to have that many starts with perfect quarterback ratings. So yeah, looking great. Lamar Jackson has just been doing it. Derrick Henry doing it again as well. 2 touchdowns on the ground and 106 yards. He even got a little reception for 27 yards. It was like a little screen, but still counts as a reception. Get an extra point on that. You'll love getting 3.7 points out of a single play for your guy. Derrick Henry, yeah, he continues to do it there. Jahmyr Gibbs, 14.6. He did score a touchdown, got a reception for 11 yards, 65 on the ground. Not anything too crazy about what you expect out of him, and he did get it there, so great stuff. Malik Neighbors, 9 receptions for 59 yards. That dude gets every target in that Giants offense. You gotta fire him up every week because he is just so volume heavy. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 receptions on 7 targets for 56 yards and a touchdown. Great job out of him. Almost 19 points there. Looked good. I know Ricky's been talking about him possibly going on the block or moving around just because he's got so many talented wide receivers. But, gosh, it'd be hard to let go of Amon-Ra St. Brown for anything other than top dollar. Brock Bowers, incredibly consistent. One of the best hits of the draft for Ricky. A touchdown on 5 receptions for 45 yards. Central to this offense. Just looks to be immediately lighting it up. These rookie tight ends have been treating Ricky very well the last few years, even though rookie tight ends have historically been a terrible bet. So, Brock Bowers, just incredible. He looked to be the best tight end ever out of college, and he's proving that he is that talented on the NFL field. So great job, Brock. Let's take a look at Garrett Wilson. We talked about him scoring 30 points. He was in my little top performers of the week screen that we looked at to look at the game breaker. 9 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just a huge part of that win for the Jets and a huge part of the win for Ricky here. Yeah, great stuff out of him there. We did have Dicker put up -3 points. He missed an extra point, and that always hurts. So tough stuff for Ricky to swallow there. But again, he got the win in exceedingly high-scoring fashion, so I'm sure he's not too upset about it. He did drop Dicker this week, though, so we'll see who he's going with next week. We didn't get a lot of points out of the Saints defense like we expected against that Panthers offense. Again, we talked about them winning this week, the Panthers. So, yeah, it wasn't great for the team defense, but he still got Alontae Taylor putting up 12.5 points with 3 passes defended. That was at least good for him there. So, yeah, 162 points on the day. Was our highest score on the week, I believe. And continues to just put down beatdowns here. Another great win for Ricky, going 2-0 on this one. Alex with another super tough loss. He did get the median win, but yeah, 140.8 was just not enough this week for this matchup. Really unfortunate for him there. Jaden Daniels, 24 points. Continues to look good, even against that tough Giants defense, which I've talked about has been great as of late. Not good enough to shut down the Commanders, though. Bijan Robinson with almost 22 points. He was very heavily involved. He even had 7 receptions. So great week out of him. J.K. Dobbins, 2 touchdowns. He even had 2 receptions as well. Over 100 all-purpose yards for him. 24.5 points is awesome to get out of him. And 25.2 out of Cortland Sutton as well. He threw a touchdown pass to Bo Nix, who caught it in the end zone there. Actually looked real great, jumping up over like a linebacker or something to catch it. So yeah, he had a touchdown completion as well as 122 receiving yards on 7 receptions. Great performance, 25.2 out of him. Calvin Ridley has really been turning it on, 12.3 out of him, 5 receptions for 73 yards, serviceable. He was only projected 10.8, so anytime you're beating projections, you feel good about that. Someone who didn't beat projections, though, was Zach Ertz, only 1 reception for 5 yards. He seems to be getting less and less involved in that game plan as they work up more into Ben Sinnott. Marvin Harrison on this team for one last week here. He only got 3.4 points and then was swiftly traded back to Dylan after this. So Alex had him, didn't like him, didn't get a lot of points out of him, and sent him away here. He did get 6 points out of his kicker, which isn't crazy in the Dimmadome. You do want a little more than that, but he wasn't projected to get too much more, so can't necessarily blame the kicker, especially when Ricky's kicker got -3. He had a 9-point differential in your kicker column. Wasn't your kicker's fault here. He got 20 points out of the Chargers defense, 3 interceptions with a forced fumble and 6 sacks. They even blocked a kick. Just brutal beatdown of the Browns from them. And then Roquan Smith only getting 3 tackles on the day. That's 2.5 points for him. That would mean that one of them was an assisted tackle. So not a great performance out of him. I believe he has been dropped as well. Yeah, again, tough stuff for Alex. I can't say I'm not too happy because I am seeing him take losses here. Him and I are pretty close together in the standings, but yeah, Alex taking another loss separates him a little further from the middle of the pack. He goes 7-11 now, with Ricky 16-2, firmly in first place. That is all of our matchups for this past week, week 9. It was a great one here, and I'm happy to take home a 2-0 win. Let's take a look at the points that were scored and see what was happening here. We had Ricky up at the top, like I said. We also had me in second, Chris at third, Alex at fourth. Lehman had that most, uncapitalized, unrealized points on his bench. Could have definitely got to the median or even a win this week, but didn't quite make the right choices. I'll take some responsibility for that because I did make some recommendations for him last week, but it's your team, man. At the end of the day, you got to own it, and he didn't make the right choice. Only 71% efficiency. That is tough stuff for him there. All right, let's take a look at the standings before we finish with the score summary. I already kind of touched on it briefly, but Ricky is in first at 16-2. Riley's in second, 13-5. Chris is in third at 12-6. We've got Nate in fourth at 10-8. Eric in fifth at 9-9. Lehman is tied at 9-9 for sixth place, has just scored a lot less points. I am now in seventh, up from 10th place with this win. This was a big week for me here at 8-10 here, and I am in striking distance, so happy about that. Alex and Corey and Dylan are all tied at 7-11. Alex is leading in points, followed by Corey and then Dylan. So Alex is in 8th, Corey's in 9th, and Dylan is in 10th. We've got Bill Cosby Sleepers that's already at 5-13 in 11th place, and he is now tied with Mike, who's in 12th place, not pictured here. Also at 5-13, just scored a little less points than Artie, so he can make his appearance back on the standings chart here next week if he has a good one. He's been banished for a long time, but I'm waiting to see him rise up and take some wins here. It could definitely be fun to see. But that does it for last week and the current picture here moving into Week 10. We got some matchups to talk about Week 10 here, so let's go ahead and get into the projection preview, and we can talk about what's happening this week.
Projection preview.
Right. Let's talk about this matchup first, just because it's first on my list, and it's easier for me to keep track of if I just go through them in order here. So I'm going to start with me. It's the Ball Hogs versus the Stroud Boys this week. I'm projected to win so far. I'm not sure if Eric is missing anyone out of his lineup. He isn't, so it's just a matter of the projections being that much further in my favor, and boy, are they. 136.39 projected for me to 117.1 for Eric. It's a 20-point difference in projections. God, I'm hoping they're not just building me up to tear me down here, because I'm hoping for great stuff. I'm starting Drake May. I dropped the losers. There's no more Dak Prescott on my team because he's injured and might make a stint on the IR. No more Joe Flacco, because he sucks, and there's a reason that he's a journeyman quarterback. I don't want to deal with it on my team anymore. So it's Drake May for the foreseeable future. I'm going to have to figure out something for his Week 14 bye, but this is my guy, and I am running with it here. Got Saquon Barkley versus the Cowboys on Sunday afternoon. Hoping for some more electric play out of him. And then we've got some Monday night action for me that I'm going to have to wait for. I've talked about hating Monday night, but I can't make any adjustments for it. These are two of my main guys, Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill, playing against the Rams on Monday night. Rams games have been somewhat high scoring so far this year, though, and their defense isn't necessarily the best part of their game. So I'm hoping that some big scores come out of my Dolphins in that one. I've got some Sunday night football action, Tank Dell versus the Lions here. And we've also got a Lion on the other side of the field, Jameson Williams, getting fired up after his 2-game suspension has been served. We'll see those guys head-to-head Sunday night in our wide receiver 2 slot here. Our tight ends are projected to score very similarly. Trey McBride going versus the Jets versus Evan Ingram against the Vikings. Not necessarily a point of advantage for either of us. We'll see how that one shakes out. He is flexing Cade Otton again. It treated him well last week. We'll see how it does for him this week. I have Brian Thomas in my flex, and it looks like Mac Jones might be starting for the Jags this week. So I don't know how excited I am to start him this week, but I don't know that I have too many other options. It might be Pop Douglas or perhaps one of these running backs that I've got here, because Jerry Jeudy is on bye, so it won't be him. Hell, I could even throw Taysom Hill in there if I truly wanted to. But Brian Thomas is in there right now, and I'm hoping that he does well no matter who is at quarterback here. As far as backups go, I would put Mac Jones above a lot of them in the NFL. He wasn't necessarily a great starter, but we'll see if he can put something together in his little stint now as a backup in Jacksonville. We got the Chiefs defense going against the Broncos. That's a divisional matchup in which the Chiefs normally do pretty well in. Chiefs defense is also just pretty good, so I'm hoping that they continue to be good. And then Ginkelberg against those Jags we talked about here. We got a couple of them going, like we were saying. Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas. I'm hoping that Ginkelberg gets in there and gets a lot done in that game here. Eric's firing up the Bills defense. He made a couple moves this week to figure out who he was going to pick up. He was thinking maybe the Packers, but then ended up going with the Bills, and they are going to be his choice this week versus the Colts, who, like I said, just had an absolutely terrible week there. He also is firing up Keenan Allen again. The Patriots defense has been soft, so it might be an exploitable option for him there. He's also got Breece Hall versus the Cardinals and James Cook versus those same Colts that we talked about for his defense. He's got nothing going on Monday here, so he should have all of his points scored pretty darn early, besides CJ Stroud going Sunday night. So I'll have, most likely, I'll have a deficit that I have to dig myself out of on Monday with two of my star players. I hope that ends up working out well for me. Monday nights historically have not for the Ball Hogs, so hoping for a different outcome this week. Okay, let's talk about Ricky versus Chris. This one is projected to be high scoring. These are two of our better teams so far. Two on a crazy win streak here. Ricky has won 3 weeks in a row. He's on a 6-win streak, and Chris has won 5 weeks in a row. He's on a 10-win streak. The median obviously doubling those numbers for those guys here. We've got Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry going tonight, so we should see Ricky jump out to an early lead with those guys. I'm sure if it's Ricky, he's hoping for about 50 out of them. You need about 30 at least. If he gets 20 out of these two, it's probably looking pretty good for Chris there. So I'm not saying 50 or 30 or 20 each. I'm saying combined out of the two of them, Ricky's probably wanting to get at least 50 tonight here. So we'll see if that ends up happening for him. But he's got more guys on his team than that. He also has, oh goodness, we haven't even talked about it yet so far. We have a Germany game this week, and we're sending our best. It's the Giants versus the Panthers, early 9:30 in the morning in Germany this week. I honestly, I wouldn't even set an alarm for that one. You can just wake up later on in the day and check the scores. But if you really want to get up early and watch that one, Malik Neighbors for Ricky is going to be the one thing he's probably looking at the closest there. He's got Gesicki going tonight in that same matchup. He's really got a lot of points there coming tonight here for both the Ravens and then Gesicki for his tight end. He doesn't have his kicker fired up yet, but I remember seeing him possibly pick one up. No, he hasn't yet. So he's trying to figure out who he's going to play for that. If I know Ricky, I believe he's waiting for Chris Olave to be determined out so he can move him into his IR slot and then pick up a kicker for free instead of dropping one of his guys because he had to go get Khalil Herbert after the trade news this week here. Yeah, so Ricky's projected 132 without a kicker versus Chris's 134 with a kicker. So Ricky is favored in this one if he does field a full lineup. But he's not going to be the only one having players play tonight. Chris has. He's been heavily invested in the Bengals this year. Joe Burrow's getting fired up for him. He can't start T. Higgins because it looks like he's probably not going to play. And he had Chase Brown, but he's been put on the IR as well. So rough stuff for, or not Chase Brown. I think he had Zach Moss, and that didn't end up working out for him moving forward here. But that's fine. He's got Joe Burrow going tonight, hoping for big points out of him. And then Kareem Hunt is in his running back 1 slot here. Who's been great. Denver's defense is tough, so we'll see if he continues to be great here, but him and Joe Mixon are expected to put up big points. He's also got Drake London going. He was concerned in the chat, asking if we think he's going to play. I said 100% yes. I think his hip injury was reported as very minor. They're probably just keeping him out of practice, not to aggravate it or anything like that. I think he's just a little bit sore, and he should be good to go. Just felt a little hard on his hip this week. I fully expect him to play, though. Scary Terry versus the Pittsburgh defense. The Steelers have historically had good defenses, but I don't know if that's necessarily the selling point for them this year, at least not the passing defense. I know TJ Watt has been great, as he always is, and they stuff the run. But, Terry still might be able to get some stuff done this week. We'll see if that is the case. George Kittle back after his bye week. Chris missed him. I know he did because he has been super consistent for him. Look at this. I mean, besides week 1, he hasn't finished, under 14 points on any week and crossing the 20-point threshold the majority of the time there. So he's hoping for more 20-point games out of George Kittle. Man, that guy has been good so far. It was, he did also miss a week there with an injury. That was a tough one for him there, but he's got Wan'Dale Robinson going in that morning game, so we should see Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson with some focus this week for the Dimmadome. They're playing right against each other in that matchup, so that should be interesting to see. And then he's stacked up the Lions defense with anal zone against that Texans offense that has been struggling the last couple weeks. We'll see if that stout Detroit defense scores a bunch of points for Chris. Harrison Butker right now staring across the aisle at nobody, but he doesn't care anyway. He's just going to be kicking those balls versus Denver. See if he gets the 10 points he's projected there. But this is definitely one to watch. Someone's win streak will be broken this week. Impossible for both teams to win. So we'll see who comes out on top after this one. All right, let's look at Bill Cosby sleepers versus the Trump 2024 team here. If the Dimmadome mirrors real life at all, then Trump 2024 is due for a massive win, a landslide victory, some could call it here, but not projected for one, that's to be sure. Also sounds a lot like real life as well. We've got Hawk Tua Tagovailoa back in for the sleepers. He held him for a long time on his IR slot. He's fired up Geno. He's fired up some other guys. Geno's on bye this week, so he's back to Tua. See if he lights it up. God, I hope he does. But me and Artie both are hoping for this win here. It would be great for me for a number of reasons if Artie won here. So let's see it. He's also got Chuba Hubbard in that Germany game. Looks like there's a lot of fantasy action in that one, actually. Even though I said you didn't really need to set your alarms for it, maybe you should, because everyone's going to be watching for one player or another in that one. Jonathan Taylor going against Buffalo. Their defense has been good, but Achane just scored 30 points against them, so it's certainly possible for Jonathan Taylor to do something similar. A.J. Brown still getting the start. He's only got a questionable tag. It's not doubtful or anything like that. The knee thing put him day to day. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he missed this one, but Artie really is going to need him to play with the way his team is looking right now. He is strapped for options here. Might end up having to flex Jelante Williams or something like that if that doesn't end up working out. Geez, yeah, he can't even slide up Mark Andrews or anything like that there. So this is really, if you're Artie, you're absolutely hoping and praying that A.J. Brown plays this week. And we'll see if he does versus the Cowboys in that divisional matchup. This is important for both sides, and there's a little bit of a rivalry there as well, so I'm sure A.J. Brown wants to play in that one if he's able to go. Sterling Shepard did well last week, so already sees no reason to drop him or move him from this position he's in. He's going to get the start again this week versus San Francisco. We've got that double tight end set up that I just mentioned, Travis Kelce versus Denver, and tonight Mark Andrews versus the Bungles. Flexing a Thursday night game technically isn't great fantasy football. Just logistically, you're supposed to flex your latest player so you have more of an opportunity to swap them out if something happens. You can swap them out with just about anyone that's available. But locking in your flex Thursday is tough. Now, I wouldn't recommend swapping Travis Kelce with Mark Andrews. You know you're going to start Travis Kelce, whereas Mark Andrews has been inconsistent. So we'll see if Artie ends up changing that up tonight or if he locks in Mark Andrews in the flex slot for that Thursday game. Jake Moody going, he's been great, he's historically been good, wouldn't change that out, and Nick Bosa, we'll see if he is revitalized. Versus Trump 2024, I don't know, man. Bosa's not about playing against him, so we'll see. He might end up helping out Trump 2024 and hurting Artie's team. We'll see if that ends up being the case. Let's take a look at Nate's team before we move on. We talked about the Dowdler still dowdling. There's a lot of parts of this Eagles-Cowboys defense in this matchup here. We'll see if Rico is a big part of it or not. He's also got Jamar Chase going tonight. So we're going to see action on both sides of the ball here in this Thursday night game. Should be interesting to see there. He's got some of that Monday night action too, though. He's got players in all of these island games. He's got one in the Germany game. He's got one at night. He's got one on Monday. He's got one, on Thursday. He's doing it all here in this matchup. We'll see how that ends up panning out for him. If anything, that makes it a little more nerve-wracking just seeing... you have to watch pretty much every snap of football all week to figure out how your team is going to end up doing. So tough stuff there. We've got the A.J. Brown versus Devonta Smith matchup. The Eagles pass catchers. I'm sure every time Jalen Hurts throws the ball, these guys are going to be waiting with bated breath to see who catches it on the other side because it has heavy implications for the both of them. Jake Ferguson also going in that same game here, so we'll see if Cooper Rush is able to hook up with him. Jordan Addison, previously called a treat an episode or two ago, I believe. Yeah, our Halloween episode last week. He can be a treat here against the Jags. This is technically the matchup that you want to fire your guys up in. Has been great for people so far. See if Addison is good for Nate here. He got his special teams defense kicker core back. Chris Boswell and TJ Watt coming off of bye and playing against the Commanders. Those guys have been good so far, and they could continue to be good moving forward here. He's also got that Minnesota defense that has been nothing but great against the Jags with possibly a backup quarterback. Oh man, if that is not a recipe for success, I don't know what is. Again, already projected to win, but it's very close. We'll see what ends up happening with these guys. I already mentioned I'm rooting for the sleepers. Let's talk about the Toaster Bats versus the Dogs. We've got Josh Allen going for the Toaster Bats as usual. He's not going to miss a week all the way until I think they have a week 14 bye. So Josh Allen's going to continue to start all the way up until we're looking at playoffs here. And we'll see what happens with him. But he's playing against that soft Colts defense. Definitely exploitable for him there. Both these quarterbacks are playing at 1 o'clock. Patrick Mahomes versus the Broncos here. We talked about that matchup being Chiefs favored, and the Chiefs haven't lost a game so far this season, so why wouldn't they be favored in this one as well? Corey, as usual, not looking at his lineup yet. He's got Nick Chubb on bye and Jaden Reed on bye. Micah Parsons still plugged into his IDP slot, though he may actually play this week. So we'll see what happens with that here. But I'm sure if I'm Corey, I'm firing up Najee and George Pickens again after they sat on bye this past week. We'll see if they end up making it in to these two slots in his lineup. I'm sure they will. He's got the Cincinnati defense queued up to play tonight. They're only projected to score 3 points. The Baltimore offense is not normally something you want to match your defense up against here. So we'll see if Corey changes that or if he just goes ahead and locks it in. If I was a gambling man, which I am, it's a serious problem, we would probably put money down on Corey not checking his roster until Sunday and realizing that the Bungles have been blown out on Thursday and he blew it again. But, I have seen him make some moves before here. We'll see if he does it again. Chase Brown also going tonight. Khalil Herbert was added, so we'll see if he eats into his volume at all or if the Baltimore defense performs well against him. My little icon on the screen with raindrops coming out of a cloud is alerting me that it may be a rainy night tonight in Baltimore, so that might emphasize more of the run game here, which I'm sure Lehman is hoping for. CeeDee Lamb still going. I haven't seen much on news for him. He did more than anticipated Wednesday in practice, so apparently he's doing fine. I would expect him to play here, and we'll see if he can get to his week-winning ways towards the end of the season here like he did last year. DeAndre Hopkins getting the nod looked to be a huge part of this offense here, and this marks 2 weeks in a row that one of Patrick Mahomes' best targets is playing against Corey here, so that could end up being a huge detriment for him if Patrick ends up targeting DeAndre a lot here. We've got Xavier Legette on the other side of the ball with Cooper Kupp there for Corey. So pretty even for Cooper Kupp versus CeeDee Lamb, at least in terms of projections this week. But yeah, Legette versus Hopkins, kind of tough stuff for him there. Let's see. We've got Sam Laporta versus Cole Kmet for tight ends. Sam Laporta's been hot and cold this year, and Cole Kmet just put up 0 last week, so we'll see what happens with those guys. Khalil Shakir still getting the nod, even though JSN went absolutely nuts last week, and that is because JSN is on bye. That's correct, if I remembered correctly, and I did. So awesome. Khalil Shakir still going there. He's got that Buffalo Bills stack. Again, the Colts defense is one that's generally been exploitable this year, so I am on board for that. Seibert's been good for him, so he's going to continue firing him off. The Bears' defense has been producing well, and Brian Branch is another electric defender. I hope he doesn't get ejected again this week here. But Lehman projected to win by quite a bit, but once we get those points in from these two guys, let's see if I can do some very quick mental math. 13 plus 11.5, we got 24.5 points on top of the 88. Yeah, you're getting somewhat close, but Lehman is still projected to win, even if he starts his best lineup here. If I was Corey, I would be desperately looking to replace my defense before kickoff tonight, but he probably won't, so we'll see what happens there. Let's take a look at the 69ers versus CIA has entered the chat. Dylan versus Alex, where Alex is projected to win by about 10 points. Nobody is missing from either of these lineups. It's just purely a speculation difference for the projections. And Bijan Robinson versus Rachaad White is a big part of that here. Rachaad White has just been getting projected less and less points as time moves on. And that is because of the emergence of both Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker being reliable weapons out of the backfield for the Bucs. So we'll see if Rachaad White manages to hold on to a lot of volume or if he does get the 10 points that he's projected. Baker Mayfield has still been slinging it, and he's getting the nod this week. Dylan tried to trade him a bunch and realized he just wanted to keep him. He's benching Matt Stafford. I think he dropped Matt Stafford here, or maybe... saw him somewhere. Anyway, it's Baker Mayfield time. He's firing him off, and he's going to have Baker going against the Niners. We'll see if he continues his quarterback 2 ways that Dylan has been so excited about here. Managed to get his hands on J.K. Dobbins from Alex's team, and now they're playing against each other, as well as Marvin Harrison. These guys traded a few guys around here. Deontay Johnson's still on his team, but on the bench here, Raheem Mostert made his way over to Alex's team for that J.K. Dobbins Marvin Harrison trade, as well as Puka Nacua now over on the 69ers. So this is a little bit of a revenge game for all these players, guys who used to be on each other's teams. We'll see what ends up shaking out with those guys here. Gonna have to wait till Monday night to see Waddle play, and also gonna have to wait to see Nacua play. So nothing's going to be decided all the way until the very end, but we'll see if Professor Tard and McPherson can get anything done with his leg tonight. Giants defense against the Panthers in Germany. Normally that'd be a pretty good bet, but it's the Giants. Anything can happen. We'll see what ends up happening with them there. All right, yeah, Alex projected to win, but these guys are both tied. We'll see who comes out on top with this a very important matchup for playoff standings. Okay, we've got one more matchup to talk about here. It is Riley, George Droid versus Herbert the Pervert, and Mike there. Mike is projected to lose, but he's also got some holes in his lineup. Historically, someone that doesn't check his lineup until a little later on as well, but I'm sure he'll be able to replace a running back here. He's got Etienne on his bench, so that might end up getting it pushed into the starting lineup here. Sam Darnold going against those Jags. He's also got Justin Jefferson. This is an exploitable matchup, like we said, so that should be a big point of production for him. Zay Flowers has been white hot recently, and he's playing tonight, so I'm sure he's hoping to hop out to a nice start with that, especially on top of... No, I'm thinking about last matchup. Forget about that. Let's look at Xavier Worthy here, who's going against Denver. Again, he had a very bad performance last week, so we'll see if he's able to turn that around. Same thing with Kyle Pitts. These two guys haven't moved. Really, the whole lineup hasn't moved, so I don't know why I'm surprised to see them in the same spots. But yeah, 2 terrible performances out of those guys. We'll see once Mike makes some moves if he is going to keep them where they're at or explore other options here. Doesn't have a ton of other options, but he does have Roma Dunze, so that could end up working out for him as well. Jake Elliott going in that Cowboys-Eagles game, and then he's got that Baltimore defensive core that we talked about with Kyle Hamilton and the Baltimore defense. Again, they're playing tonight, so yeah, he's definitely hoping to hop out to an early lead with Zay, with the Baltimore defense, and with Kyle Hamilton. The Denver defense still getting fired up for Riley. I don't know why you ever wouldn't, except maybe if they were playing, I don't know, the Chiefs. Oh, would you look at that? Pretty scary stuff there. We'll see if they're able to pull it through or if they end up putting up another negative 3-point week like they did last week here. Zaire Franklin getting the nod here. I don't think that's who he had last week, so he must have just picked him up. Brandon Aubrey, of course, getting the start. Why wouldn't he? Been electric, kicker number 1 forever. Brian Robinson, I think he's making a return this week. TJ Cockenballs, he was great, and he can continue to be good moving forward here. And then, yeah, Christian McCaffrey finally getting activated, finally getting the nod. We'll see if he does end up playing. He's projected to score 20 points versus the Bucs. I'd love to see him finally play. Riley named him Demon Time with a little eggplant there. I'm not 100% sure if that's a reference to something, but he is excited to fire him up, I'm sure. That number 1 overall pick. Again, projected to be a big win for our number 2 team versus our last place team. But again, do not sleep on the perverts. They are good and they have talent and they're capable of scoring quite a few points here. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But that's it. That does it for all of our matchups here. It's going to be a pretty crazy week. We're getting real close to those playoffs, so each one of these matchups means more and more. Everyone having little arguments in the chat. Who's better for this? Who's going to do this? It's exciting times, and we'll see what ends up happening with the playoff bracket here. Not quite ready to start showing the bracket every week because everything is still possible to move. Hell, even Ricky has kind of been caught up to somewhat by some of these guys here, so it's not even a lock that he finishes in first, though if I were a betting man, I'd say he probably gets the bye with him being 16-2. But yeah, it's gonna have to be a big week for everyone to kind of lock all that stuff in. I'm excited to watch that game tonight, and I'm excited to see what happens with the rest of it here. But until then, I did want to thank everybody for listening. It's been another fun one, and I can't wait to see what happens. Another big game tonight, so go enjoy it, and I'll see you all back here for next episode next week. Thanks again, guys. Later.
Thank you for listening to the DFL Breakdown. Tune in next week for more.